We're going today to come into a bit of a supportive practice with a bolster. So this is going to be restorative. If you do not have a bolster at home, do not worry. You can grab yourself about 3 blankets, 2 to 3 blankets. If they're thicker, grab less, and fold them so that you've got a long support. Of course, if you've got blankets rather than a bolster, you might notice that I will move the bolster around my body, and if you've got blankets laid down, you might have to move yourself around the blankets instead, just because they might be harder to reposition. To begin with, once you have those blankets or your bolster laid down the length of your mat, then we're going to begin in child's pose, and we are going to work here for some time. I'm going to sit back onto my heels, bring the bolster in towards me. I want to make sure it's close to me so that I've got the big part of the chest and the head resting onto the bolster, being supported by the bolster, and that's really important to allow ourselves to drop down, to not have to hold on in this pose. It will depend upon the length of your trunk as to your placement. However, I usually have it quite close so that I can get the hips down as well. From here, I'm going to press the hips back. I'm going to come and allow the head to drop down, and the hands might wrap around. Now, the hands do not have to wrap around the top of your bolster or your blankets. They can rest anywhere that you'd like them to. I just like this feeling of cupping the top of my bolster. And again, I'm going to give myself that opportunity to press backwards. Sometimes when we come forwards, we'll lift the hips just lightly and then send it down. If you find that you have a bolster and you can't quite make this comfortable, you might have to prop the end up a little bit, and don't be afraid of doing that. You can grab a footstool, you can grab a couple of blocks, you can grab extra blankets, you can grab cushions, whatever you've got at home, just to pop this end up so that you've got a little bit more height to it. You can also run extra blankets down the length of your bolster to make it higher for you. As you settle into here, remember your breath. We're trying to make that smooth, deep breath. As we come into our first pose, it's important now that we ground down, that we connect into our body. So ask yourself how you're feeling, and you might want to do a mental scan there, just like we do at the start of every practice we come into, establishing that baseline for yourself. Child's pose is one of those poses where we can really connect to what we need, where we can embrace our needs as an innocent, without judgment. Let go of any confusion, any adult constraints that you might have going on in your life, and just for the next 15 minutes, commit to being that childlike self, free of worry. Now, if worries start to creep in, please don't beat yourself up for that. Don't think you're failing at your yoga practice. Remember that word, practice. The more that you do this, the better you will get at it. And if you haven't been on your mat in a while, don't expect that this will be easy. I often say that if you had a little bit of a break, first practice back is like walking up a mountain. It's going to feel hard, but it's worth it when you get to the top. Next time you do it, it will be easier. Once you've done this mental scan, make a note of any feelings of tightness, tension in your body. And those feelings of tightness and tension might just not be physical, they could also be emotional. And make a note if they're within your psyche as well. If you're feeling some mental resistance to the practice today. You're going to take another couple of breaths in this pose, in this position, and then we're going to stay with the hips exactly where they are, but we're going to turn our head to face the opposite side, so we're opening up the neck in the opposite way. Inhaling from there, lifting the gaze, turning the neck, placing the cheek down, and you're going to see if there's any difference from side to side. Because usually there is. Usually the first side that we come down into is the side that we prefer. Usually we like to turn our head in one way because it's a little bit freer. So this side that you've noticed, and maybe you've done it unconsciously, or maybe you've consciously learned to go to your tighter side, but the side that you feel is tighter, I want you to pay particular attention to in your practice. You might like to do that side twice. You might like to, next time you come into a practice, just do that side. Be careful that you don't overwork. Take it slow and seek balance. Now, whilst you're heavy and lying in this position, see if you can expand the muscles between the ribs. See if you can breathe length into your spine. You'll notice the slight arching of your body across your support. Let that support take your weight. I like to sometimes imagine I'm a worm or a caterpillar with all these different segments, and I'm reaching them out. Just like an invertebrate. Nice, deep, slow breaths, even on the inhale and the exhale. Inhale ourselves from there and begin to walk our hands in underneath the shoulders now. So I'm going to lead with the back of my head to come on up. And then from there I'm going to bring one knee forward. So I'm using my bolster, I'm just bringing it to the side or working yourself around your blankets. And I'm going to step my right knee to the side of the bolster and then work that left knee back. Coming into a bit of a pigeon here. Lifting upwards, seeking again to lay myself across my support, and I walk it forward. And here you want to feel comfortable through the knee. If it does not feel comfortable for you to have this much flexion, this much bend, if I move the bolster out of the way, you'll see that. It's not comfortable for you to have this much flexion, then please come out of this practice. You can always come over onto your back and bring your knee into your chest without bending it so much. You can have the sole of the foot pressing up to the ceiling. As you bring your thigh into your chest, you'll get a very similar release for the glutes without placing this weight down onto the knee. Again, I'm going to turn my head, and I'm going to turn it in any way that I feel comfortable. Just remembering that when I come to the other side, I'm going to turn it in the opposite direction. As you're here, start to slow the breaths down. Come more and more into your own body. We're not actively seeking thought. If thoughts come in, we're not rushing to push them away. Just recenter yourself, ground yourself back into your body. This is the way that we learn to let go of worry. Just to sit in each moment. To regain the innocence of childhood. If you've ever watched a child play, they will be quite often really just present in what they're doing. The joy of the moment. That is what we are seeking. The abandon of the practice. And then from here, let's start to lift again our head and our hands. We're working underneath the shoulders, leading with the back of the head. And we're going to bring it back. I like to just come back to a neutral pelvis before moving into the opposite side. So press the hips back. You can always use the end of your bolster or the blankets to rest your head here too. So it's quite nice if you need that extra support in your child's pose to use your prop. Now from here we're coming across the opposite side. So again, I'm going to adjust, bringing your knee to the side and working the bolster in. A little bit of support for the pelvis, the top of the belly there, coming down onto the bolster. It's going to be different for every person, however, because the trunk will be a different length. And then from now, I'm turning my gaze. If you're bringing your knee into your chest and you're on your back for a hug, please just swap when you're ready. And then again, you don't have to draw your hands to the shin and get this knee flexion. You can draw your hands behind your thigh, release your heel up towards the ceiling, a more comfortable knee position if you need it. Hands anywhere that you'd like them to be, gaze turning in the opposite direction. And once again we breathe. Now as we turn our gaze to the other side, you'll notice that you're engaging through different muscles. So see what you can feel through your body. Again, ground yourself using your body. I like to think of the physical as an anchor. An anchor so that the mind doesn't wander off, doesn't fly off in a million different directions. start to lift the head, work the hands in underneath the shoulders, and I'm sending my hips backwards. Taking that forehead down towards the prop or towards the earth, releasing the spine. Inhaling to come on up. This time I'm going to land both knees across the side. So we're taking a twist, and I'm going to set up a kind of a right angle here of my thighs parallel to the top of my mat and then my shins out. I've dragged my bolster, or you might have to work yourself towards your blankets, towards the hip crease on that right leg, and then I'm lifting up again and I'm laying myself down. I like to gaze in the direction of my knees. I find that is more comfortable for my neck. You do what you need. Now, what often happens here, and I find I hike one hip up, and you'll notice if one knee is higher than the other, sometimes you've got to slide that base hip down so that I'm onto the side of the hip and not onto the buttock. Now at this point it's useful to note that in some poses, as opposed to in other poses, you may have to prop differently. So for instance, in this pose, you might need that little bit of extra height. In other poses, you might not, vice versa. So do adjust your level, your height of your prop when you need to. Start to feel that sweeping motion of the breath. Like wind swirling through the belly and the chest. Start to feel the pressure of the diaphragm pushing against those lower ribs, ribs expanding. As you're into a chest, you're going to experience this breath quite differently maybe than if you are neutral with the spine. See if you can notice how one lung responds as opposed to the other. What regions can you breathe into? Inhaling down, and we'll start to come across the opposite side. Now you can come back to your knees, or you can roll over onto the bottom and come back the other way, whichever way suits you. Again, I'm going to pop the hips down. I'm going to bring my bolster in around about the hip crease, slide that hip down because I know I've just done it, where I've got up high onto the buttock and I want to be onto the side. And then lifting the chest, lifting the ribs, letting them come down onto the support, gazing the direction of the knees. It's also worth noting that if for any reason this is feeling uncomfortable, you can also change how close or far away from your prop you are. So sometimes people will report that actually they don't have enough room, they're feeling quite cramped, and again you might have to take some blankets away if you've got a blanket, if you've only got a bolster and it's feeling too intense, try and slide it away, and this will give you a little bit of a different feeling. You might be here today. I like the feeling of support. and let's come back up. It's time now to come all the way around and onto your back, so you can move any props that you have out of the way. We're going to come into happy baby to finish, and then straight into your relaxation, your meditation, whatever you need to carry on either into your day or into sleep. Melting ourselves down to the earth with control. And then bringing the knees in for a hug. Now, again, you can hold on behind the thighs, and that's perfectly okay. From now, you might be working the soles of the feet towards the ceiling, grabbing onto behind the thighs and drawing those knees down towards your shoulders. Alternatively, you can walk your hands up towards the soles of the feet and do the same thing. Now I'm trying to get the sacrum to connect down to the earth, even if that means that I have to release a little bit with the legs and the heels towards the edge of my mat. I'm going to give it a little rock from side to side at this point. And then another squeeze in towards the chest. Thank you so much for your attention today. I hope you've got something out of this practice. Namaste.